In 2025, green hydrogen is still being introduced with a single number: $2 per kilogram, sometimes 3, occasionally even less. These figures are repeated so often that they begin to sound inevitable, as if cost is simply a function of time and scale. But when you step into real projects, projects that have to connect to real power systems, meet real schedules, secure real offtake, and survive real execution constraints, those numbers start to drift. Not because the technology is broken, but because the system around green hydrogen is far more complex than most cost narratives acknowledge. What determines green hydrogen cost in practice is not just electrolyzer price or renewable electricity rates. It is how power availability, utilization, grid constraints, construction timelines, financing conditions, and operational readiness interact over time. And when those interactions are not controlled, cost models quietly lose alignment with reality. This is why many hydrogen projects look affordable on paper and expensive in operation. And it is why serious organizations treat hydrogen not as a standalone technology, but as a system that must be planned, governed, and executed with discipline. In this video, we break down green hydrogen costs in 2025 versus reality, not to dismiss progress, but to explain where the gap comes from, why it persists, and what the system-level constraints really are. Because sustainability is not decided by targets or headlines. It is decided by whether the systems behind clean energy actually hold together. On paper, green hydrogen cost models appear deceptively simple. Take the cost of renewable electricity, add electrolyzer capital and operating costs, factor in efficiency and divide by output. Adjust assumptions for utilization and financing, and a clean number emerges. This approach is useful. It helps compare pathways, it sets directional targets, but it is not how real systems behave. Real systems do not operate at average conditions. They operate under variability, constraint, and uncertainty. Renewable electricity is not continuously cheap or continuously available. Power prices fluctuate, grid congestion appears, curtailment assumptions change, interconnection delays shift timelines. Each of these factors alters the operating profile of a hydrogen system in ways that static models struggle to capture. Electricity is the dominant cost driver for green hydrogen, yet it is often treated as a stable input. In reality, renewable power is location-dependent and increasingly contested. As more assets connect to the grid, access to the cheapest hours becomes uneven. Hydrogen projects are often planned on the assumption that they will absorb excess renewable power. In practice, that excess is neither guaranteed nor free. Grid constraints introduce further complexity. Many hydrogen projects are sited near renewable resources but far from robust transmission infrastructure. Interconnection queues stretch into years. Upgrade costs appear late in development. Until power is delivered reliably and at predictable prices, electrolyzer utilization remains uncertain. Lower utilization raises the effective cost of every kilogram produced. Utilization is one of the most underestimated drivers of hydrogen cost. Models frequently assume high capacity factors. Reality introduces maintenance downtime, grid limitations, and operational trade-offs. Each reduction in utilization does not simply reduce output, it increases the cost burden carried by each unit of hydrogen produced. Capital intensity amplifies this effect. Electrolyzer technology itself has made real progress, but it is only one component of a much larger system. Balance of plant equipment, water treatment, compression, storage, safety systems, and controls all add cost and complexity. These components are essential, not optional. They scale differently than electrolyzer stacks and are often underestimated in early-stage cost projections. Financing adds another layer of divergence between projected and real costs. Hydrogen projects are capital-intensive and often first of a kind in their specific configuration. Lenders and investors price risk accordingly. Assumptions that look reasonable in a model can be discounted heavily in financing discussions if execution risk is not clearly managed. Even modest increases in the cost of capital materially affect delivered hydrogen cost. Offtake introduces further system constraints. Producing hydrogen cheaply is only valuable if it can be delivered reliably to customers who require consistency in volume, pressure, and purity. Industrial users are not flexible consumers. They depend on stable supply. Meeting those requirements often necessitates additional storage, redundancy, and operational discipline, all of which add cost. Transportation and conversion amplify these challenges. Whether hydrogen is used on-site, moved by pipeline, or converted into ammonia or other derivatives, losses occur. Infrastructure requirements grow. Interfaces multiply. Each interface is a potential failure point. Each failure point introduces risk and cost that rarely appears in headline projections. Policy support plays an important role in bridging current costs and long-term targets. Incentives, subsidies, and contracts for difference can improve economics. But policy is itself part of the system. Eligibility rules, administrative processes, and political timelines introduce uncertainty. Projects that rely heavily on policy must manage that uncertainty carefully, or it will surface as financing and execution risk. Execution is where many hydrogen cost narratives finally unravel. Cost models are static. Execution is dynamic. Construction delays increase interest during construction. Supply chain disruptions affect delivery schedules. Permitting challenges stall progress. Scope changes ripple through budgets. Each of these factors increases real cost without changing the underlying technology. This is why cost divergence in green hydrogen is rarely about a single failure. It is the result of multiple small deviations accumulating across the system. Power assumptions drift, utilization slips, timelines extend, financing terms tighten. By the time the gap becomes visible, it is embedded in the project structure. In large energy programs, this is why execution discipline matters as much as technology choice. Coordinating power availability, construction sequencing, grid readiness, and offtake timing over multiple years requires more than spreadsheets and good intentions. It requires systems that make constraints visible early and keep assumptions aligned with reality as conditions change. This is also why serious organizations rely on structured planning and portfolio control environments when developing hydrogen and other complex energy projects. These systems are not about micromanagement. They exist to surface risk, track dependencies, and prevent silent drift. When schedules, resources, and assumptions are fragmented, cost control becomes reactive rather than proactive. Green hydrogen does not fail because cost targets are ambitious. It fails when systems are not designed to protect those targets under real-world conditions. Projects that integrate power, storage, construction, and offtake planning, realistically, are far more likely to approach their modeled costs. Projects that assume best-case conditions across every variable are far more likely to disappoint. In 2025, the most credible hydrogen projects are not necessarily the ones advertising the lowest projected cost per kilogram. They are the ones that demonstrate system maturity. Stable power access, realistic utilization, clear execution pathways, disciplined governance. Those projects may start at higher costs, but they improve over time because their systems are resilient. This distinction matters for environmental sustainability. A hydrogen project that underperforms or collapses does not reduce emissions. It delays progress and erodes confidence. Sustainability is not served by optimistic projections that cannot survive execution. It is served by systems that deliver consistent, long-term performance. Green hydrogen will become more affordable, but not automatically. Cost reduction will not come from a single breakthrough. It will come from incremental improvements across power systems, grid infrastructure, utilization strategies, financing frameworks, and execution capability. That is a systems journey, not a technology sprint. This is why Renewable Energy approaches green hydrogen through the lens of sustain, systems, and clean tech. Sustainability sets the goal. Clean tech provides the tools. Systems determine whether the goal is reached. Ignoring any one of these elements weakens the entire effort. In 2025, green hydrogen sits at a critical point. Expectations remain high, but reality is forcing a more honest conversation. That conversation is not about abandoning hydrogen. It is about building the systems required for it to succeed. If green hydrogen is to play a meaningful role in decarbonization, its economics must be grounded in reality. That means acknowledging constraints, designing for variability, and managing execution with discipline. It means treating cost targets as aspirations that require protection, not guarantees that will materialize on their own. The question is no longer whether green hydrogen can work. The question is whether the systems around it are ready. In many cases, they are not yet. Understanding that gap is the first step toward closing it. Because in the end, sustainability is not achieved by promising lower costs. It is achieved by building systems that make those costs real.